What's up, guys? My name is Jake. Welcome to Abandoned, episode 27. This, of course, is the show where we talk about some of the most interesting abandoned places in the world. Now, we've talked about Rolling Acres Mall, which may be one of the most infamous abandoned malls in the world, but just 26 miles north of Rolling Acres sat at one time the world's largest mall, and that's the Randall Park Mall. So just about 9 miles outside of Cleveland, in the town of North Randall, Ohio, sits what's left of Randall Park Mall. If we take it back a few years, it didn't always look like this. And well, if we're gonna take it back in time, we might as well go all the way back to the beginning. In the mid-60s, the Randall Park racetrack was being planned to be redeveloped into something absolutely massive. A 2-level mall, a 2-story office building, 2 14-story apartment buildings, and a 4,500-seat performing arts center would all take this land. The man behind this dream was named Edward J. DeBartolo, and with the master plan of his mall complex scaled down to just a massive mall, construction began in the early 70s. During the construction, Edward was reported to be very, extravagant. He would often arrive on the construction site via helicopter and spend thousands of dollars on Italian dinners for the media. After almost 15 years of planning and development, the $175 million mall complex opened, with 5 anchor stores which were Sears, Horns, Higbee's, JCPenney, and the Mays Company. Along with these, the mall had an additional 100 stores which made up the mall's 2.2 million square feet. This made the Randall Park Mall the largest shopping mall in the world. However, the title of the world's largest mall was downgraded fairly quickly after its opening. In the mall's first operating year, it brought in over $140 million in net sales. Sales and growth for Randall Park were massively great for the mall in its first few years. However, not too long after, Randall Park was becoming known for some pretty sketchy things.
And once again, it's a story that proves that death takes no holiday. It happened outside the Randall Park Mall, not far from where last-minute shoppers were rushing to make purchases. Cleanup workers found the body of a man lying face down in the snow. Police say the man, 23-year-old Larry Cook of Glendale Avenue in Cleveland, had been shot once in the head. Last seen Wednesday night, it's not yet known what happened to Cook or just how he got here.
Car thefts and break-ins, muggings, and gang activity all began to appear on the premises of the mall, which brought down the reputation of Randall Park, and in return, the number of shoppers to visit the mall. By 1992, anchor tenant Horns closed its doors, and just after that, Burlington Coat Factory opened up on the second floor. It seems as though DeBartolo Realty Group didn't like the future of the mall and where it was headed, so a property development group based out of Indianapolis purchased the property and vowed to spend $20 million for a massive renovation to the mall in the summer of 1998. The theater would be built in the top northwest of the mall. Way back when the mall first opened, a chain named Hallie's was planned to be built adjacent to Higbee's, and the space was reserved for the chain until they declared bankruptcy in 1982. So the space was now open to future development, and the new movie theater would fit perfectly there. A year following the beginning of the renovation, in 1999, the new food court and the Magic Johnson movie theater opened. As the millennium came in, the mall was not performing anywhere near they wanted it to, and retail in the mall continued to slump, which resulted in tenants leaving. In just the first few months of the cinema open, gunfire erupted in the lobby of the theater. With this, Randall Park's reputation wasn't getting any better, and as a result, stores inside the mall were struggling. Back in 1998, JCPenney reformatted its store into an outlet property, and they couldn't even make that financially viable for the company. And JCPenney closed their store in 2001. Even the store in Rolling Acres Mall was able to work longer than this one. Things for the mall were not doing well, and just a year later, anchor tenant Dillard's closed due to declining sales. And by 2003, the mall was at 50% occupancy. By 2004, the mall was at a serious decline and things weren't getting any better. During this time, the mall was bought out once again by Witchard Realty, who thought, the mall's fine how it is, let's just leave it and not do anything to fix it. And that's exactly what they did. With the new property company at the helm, the mall was left in its current rapidly declining state. And as more tenants continued to leave and as more competition drew shoppers away, the mall's decline was becoming much more apparent. Escalators were indefinitely being shut off, and vacant storefronts were walled off completely. Despite the building's impressive architecture, it did look kind of dated. The realty company owning the property put the mall's basically only valuable asset, the Magic Johnson Theater, up for sale at around $5 million, which never ended up being purchased. By 2006, the mall was in over $200,000 worth of debt, and as the mall declined, so did the stores and buildings surrounding it. The tax certificates, which apparently is a thing, were sold off from the county to a tax servicing company, and in 2007 they filed for the foreclosure of the property. While this did take a while for it to come to fruition, tenants in the mall continued to leave. The Magic Johnson Theater was rebranded after the company was bought out by AMC Theaters, and a trade college leased out the former JCPenney space. By 2007, the property managers knew the mall was far beyond what they could do to save it. And during this time, the building was in the early plans of being turned into some sort of church, school, entertainment complex. However, these plans never followed through. In February, the mall lost yet another anchor store, Macy's, and soon after it was announced that the mall could no longer stay open and that it would soon close. By June of 2009, the remaining anchor stores, Burlington Coat Factory, Furniture Mattress Liquidators, the Trade College, and the rebranded cinema, could all be accessed from the outside of the mall, which meant shoppers wouldn't have to enter the interior of the mall to access these stores. These stores would remain open as the interior of the mall would close. Even though there are conflicting reports of the mall's actual legitimate closure, the mall's foreclosure was definitely finalized by June 14, 2009, not too long after the cinema also closed its doors permanently. The once grand shining mall of the mid-1970s, part of the American shopping mall boom of its time, and a testament of American architecture and urban planning. The inside was left completely abandoned and became one of the most infamous and largest abandoned malls in the world. All of the interior stores, along with the vacant movie theater and anchor stores, which included Macy's, were left abandoned, and in particular, Macy's suffered major water damage. The mall left a massive footprint on the town, and where there's land that could be used, developers will jump on it. Between 2013 and 2014, two different developers began acquiring as much of the mall as they could. This was in a joint venture to turn the land into a mixed-use industrial space. As soon as the Sears space was purchased, selective demolition on the main mall structure began on December 29, 2014. All of the anchor store spaces would remain untouched except for the former Dillard's. The JCPenney would remain there, as was the only parcel of land the developers could not acquire, as it was now in the possession of the Trade College. Burlington Coat Factory and Lassalle, which resided both in the same building, would remain open. The former Sears, Macy's, and cinema would stay vacant, yet the buildings would remain untouched. The demolition of the main structure took around 6 months to complete, and left 5 anchor stores still standing. The concept was that since the entire structure couldn't realistically be used and rehabbed, if they just preserve the large open spaces that used to be the anchor stores, they can theoretically be turned into warehouses or some type of industry. In 2015, Burlington Coat Factory closed its doors permanently, and just recently the furniture store has now closed its doors, leaving the Trade College the only remaining business out of the former mall. On May 5, 2016, the former movie theater was set on fire from a suspected act of arson. As for the property's surroundings, well, a lot of the storefronts and buildings remain abandoned from the mall's long downslope. Just off to the corner of the property, the former Holiday Inn, which became abandoned sometime in the early 2000s, is in absolutely horrible condition, and that also still remains abandoned there today. Only a tiny bit of the former Holiday Inn land is being used now as a Wendy's. So as of early 2017, the 4 vacant anchor store buildings still remain abandoned and all up for sale. It seems as though the developers' hopes for companies to swoop in and buy or lease out the buildings haven't exactly panned out yet. As of right now, none of the buildings have been leased or purchased yet, and the entire property is up for sale right now for $9.2 million. While the entire property is currently up for sale, all the individual remaining structures are up for lease. So what's going to happen to the property and what remains in the mall? Well, so far nothing has been announced as to the future developments of the land. Like I said, the former anchor stores are still up for lease, and the entire property is up for sale. The thing is though, if one building is leased, the overall land for sale would become much more complicated. For example, if someone were to buy the entire property with, say, the Macy's building leased out, then the developers would have to work and plan around the temporary leased building. Honestly though, if a developer were to buy the entirety of the land, they probably would just demolish the existing structures. Then again, it is all theorizing, and honestly, only time will tell. It is pretty crazy to me how many people actually don't know about this mall. Even though the majority of the mall was demolished, it is still a pretty spectacular abandoned building. Randall Park Mall was also just around 25 miles away from Rolling Acres Mall, which is another extremely infamous abandoned mall. This mall was a symbol of what the American mall boom in the 70s created, and even though the mall slowly declined over multiple decades, it was a mall built for a demand that just wasn't there for it anymore. Its incredible grand architecture and scale will always live on with the people who got to enjoy it. Randall Park Mall was truly a marvel in mall design and execution, only for it to slowly and publicly decline until there was nothing left. If you like this video on the stuff that we produce, please consider donating to us on Patreon.